Okay, I'm Kevin Maples, and got Mark Timberlake here joining me. And this is my first blab, so hopefully, technically, things are going to go well. I think Mark's pretty experienced with this, so he can maybe help us if we have some problems. But we're just going to be doing a kind of informal chat for the next 30 minutes, talking about capturing the moment in any given lighting situation, and then we're going to open up a seat here and take different questions. So let me just introduce myself real quick and give Mark a chance to introduce himself, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm a semi-professional photographer, meaning I do it professionally, but not for a living. So I do a lot of sports photography. That's my favorite thing. Really like that whole aspect of just capturing the action and just the challenge of it. And I really enjoy taking pictures of young people and then seeing them enjoy the pictures. So that's one of the reasons I really love sports photography. I also do portraits and things like that, and I teach sports photography on Udemy as well. So Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so Mark Timberlake, a lot of people know me from SME Heroes, but I don't know how many people actually realize I'm a commercial photographer as well. So I've been a commercial photographer for over 5 years, and we tend to deal with high sort of medium to high, large size companies and doing corporate photography. So we only do corporate work in terms of getting paid. So we don't do weddings and we don't do anything else. But I do a lot of my own photography. My real love is the photography I do for myself. So that's where a lot of this is really coming from today. But the basics of this are what what commercial photographers know, what we're going to be talking about. And once you understand some of these basics, then photography becomes just this other world completely. So that's where I'm sort of coming from here.
Yeah, that's great. And when we were talking about doing a blog about photography, Mark said he wanted to do capturing the moment because that's something he really enjoyed. And I think that's for all of us that are photographers. There's things that we love and enjoy, but if we're not careful, it becomes a job, and then you don't necessarily love some of those things. And so I'm glad we got a chance to talk about some cool things that you really love today. So anyway, just talking about capturing the moment, I don't really know our audience, how many people are maybe serious hobbyists or use a DSLR regularly, or there may be some people that just use a point and shoot camera or their phone. And I want to try to kind of cover all those areas so that everybody that's watching, we get a little bit of something for them. So, obviously most of the time I use my DSLR, but there's some principles that we're going to talk about today that even if you're just using your phone for photography, you can certainly still use these kind of things and apply. And I just want to kind of start the discussion thinking about, because we're talking about capturing the moment, and that's really broad. That might mean, capturing your kids playing in the yard, or it might mean a nature moment, or it might even be a architecture in a given time in the sun. Pretty broad. But when we think about capturing a moment, I thought maybe we could kind of start off with talking about preparation. I think that's really an important part. There's this quote, and I meant to look it up before our session, and I didn't get it looked back up. But Angela Adams talks about that taking the perfect photograph is finding the right spot to take the picture. And that's really that whole concept of preparation and thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you can do to really make sure that you capture a moment is to anticipate it. And so when you're thinking about a moment, you can go ahead and begin to think through some of the decisions that you need to make. Like, for example, framing a shot. I know when I was a teenager taking pictures with a point and shoot camera, it never really occurred to me that there's all these different angles you can take your shot from and then make all the difference in the world. When you first start out taking pictures, a lot of times you just think of whatever you're taking a picture of, getting the person lined up in the center and pressing the button. But the reality is that there's so many decisions you can make, even if you're just using your phone or a point and shoot, by just moving around the subject. Anytime that you're taking a picture of a subject, whether it's a kid playing ball or anything, you can move 360 degrees around the subject and get a completely different background and change your focus.
I'm still here, don't worry, Kevin. I'm just going to try something here in terms of bringing in some images, if I can. I don't know how well this is going to work on the blab.
All right, that'd be great.
I just want to see if I can illustrate the point a little bit. So let me just see if I can move that across.
Hey, Mark, I'm going to have to leave you for just 1 second. You want to talk for just a minute? I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so here's what we're talking about. So I think some examples of capturing the moment. So here's this guy, I don't know how well you can see it in the blab because it's a small window. Here's this guy, and he's, he was just sitting on this bin waiting for people to give him some chips, basically. And I was just watching him. So it's like Kevin was saying, it's capturing the moment. But what it is, you set a stage. You have to find the stage for your photo. And that's really, really important. So I saw the bird. Now, most people would do is see the bird and they would just take a picture. But I'm looking at it. I move around. I've got the light where I want it. And the bird's just doing what he's doing. And then I'm waiting for that moment, when he's looking at me, when he's giving me the thing, and that's capturing the moment. So the way to sort of think about it is like this. It's like you go to the theater, there's a stage. And when you find the stage and the light's right and the background's good, the character enters in. And that's what happened here. And it's the same principle with a lot of photography. When you're capturing the moment, and this is where people, like with street photography, this is the way. Who's the French photographer, Kevin? I forgot his name off the top of my head.
Not sure.
Very famous. It'll come to me in a moment because I'm trying to think of his name. I can't remember it. It's something to do with my age. But, he basically, very famous photographer. And he was really good at finding the stage, finding the place where the actor could come into, where the event could happen into. So he would find the light, find the background, find the setting, and then he would wait for that moment. So it's like you're watching the stage and you're waiting for the actor to do something, and then you take that picture. And a lot of really good photography, well, that's the principle.
Yeah, and when you're talking about waiting for the bird to look toward you, you're anticipating what it was going to do, right?
Because he'd already done it. Yeah, he'd already done it once. And he was there. And what was happening was it was a bin, and people are eating chips. I think you call them fries, but he was eating chips, and and he was this was his bin. He was not even letting other birds near it. So I was watching him. Once I saw him, I just knew what was going to happen at some point. He was going to give me a shot that I wanted, and that's how that works.
Yeah, I think that's really illustrating that point really well, is that there's several things you can do to kind of prepare for a moment when you anticipate it. Like I noticed, you had a real shallow depth of field there, which brought him out. And obviously, if you wait till he looks at you to set your aperture, by the time you get it set, he may be looking the other way, right? So. Yeah. So, one of the things you can do is, as you anticipate the moment, is you go ahead and make some decisions about, number one, how you're going to frame it. And framing might involve moving around. And I missed a little bit what you said there on the first part when I had to step away. But I don't know if you moved around to find that particular angle.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I wanted that wall. I needed the blank space behind the wall. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to share another one where anticipating the moment. So this is I'll show you some of my commercial work later on, but this is just my stuff that I love to do. And at first, when you look at this image, it just looks like any old sort of image. But I was actually watching this and anticipating the moment. There was these three elderly ladies coming across. And there's some synchronizing going on here. There's some compositional elements. So if you have a look, and what you can actually see is you've got the two ladies with the walking sticks, and you've got these two ladies almost mirroring each other. You've got all these mirrored elements going on, and it was just charming. But it wasn't that I snapped it. I was watching them come. I knew where the light was, and then when I caught that moment, when they paused and she pointed, I was there. Now, there's some things I don't like about the image, like the bench behind and everything. The background isn't great. But I like the image because, it just captures that moment we're talking about.
One of the things that's interesting about that image you got up now, the shadows there behind the ladies, one of the things that I hope we can kind of touch on is different lighting. We all know that, early in the morning and, the hour after sunrise and the hour before sunset is referred to as golden hour. And the light's softer, it's a little easier to take pictures. And then, of course, if it's overcast, you got a real soft light. But a lot of people will shy away from harsh direct sunlight. And in that picture, you had some pretty strong light, and those shadows behind the ladies really it didn't detract from the picture. I think it really added some depth and dimension. And so that's something to think about. Is you don't have to completely, you don't shut down in the middle of the day and wait, for a better light. There's a lot of things you can do, and shadows can add some real depth and dimension to your photograph.
Absolutely, Kevin. That's a key thing is using. I actually love hard light. I'm one of those rare photographers. I actually love hard light, and I'll show you. I'll just show you another image where I've got a lot of hard light, and this was anticipating the moment. This was a donkey ride, and they kept walking backwards and forwards, and people kept walking in, and it took. I was probably there about 10 minutes waiting to get this shot, but that is really, really hard light. And I think, just to back up, there's two types of light that you're going to work with and everything else in between. You've got hard light source and a soft light source. A soft light gives you soft shadows. A hard light gives you harsh shadows. And most photographers run away from hard light. But when you're capturing the moment and you're doing sports photography or anything where stuff's happening, you're not choosing the light. You've got to work with the light you've got. And that's part of it, isn't it? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Capture a moment. You got to work with the light that you got. So maybe we can take a moment and talk about probably the most difficult situations where we have some hard light, things that people often shy away from, and some ideas that we can capture some great shots, even in hard light. And one of the things I remember, years ago, before I was serious about photography and I just had a point and shoot camera and back where we used film, you never took a backlit photo because with the camera you can't see what you're doing. In the film camera, you take a backlit, the exposure, it's going to meter the sun, and so your subject's just going to be really dark. And of course now we've got the ability to, with digital, see instantly what you have. And of course now if you use a DSLR, you've got different metering options. And of course, you go into manual, you can adjust that right away. And the thing is too, like the iPhone and the newer Samsung may as well, I don't know, but like the iPhone has a exposure. You click the screen and you raise your finger to increase exposure and you lower it to decrease exposure. And of course you can see immediately what's happening. And, one of the things that you can do in a harsh sunlight, if you're worried about like a downward shadow, because that's one of the things, if you got sun directly overhead, it can cause a shadow right here under the eyes, and it causes a shadow under the nose, and a harsh shadow under here can make it unattractive if you're taking a picture of a person. And one of the things you can do to get around that is you can put the sun to the person's back. And there's a couple of things you can do. One, with the complete control over exposure, you can correctly expose their face and just allow the background to kind of be blown out. And that's not always a bad thing to have the background, blown out. Sometimes it can really highlight your person. And then the other thing, go ahead.
This image here, Kevin, this is exactly what you're talking about. Now, when you look at it, people might think this is soft light, but this is a hard light photo session. Okay, these are friends of mine. I don't do weddings, but these are actually friends of mine. So we did their photography as a wedding present. I don't do weddings, but this is hard light. Now, when people look at it, it doesn't look like hard light because this is broad daylight. This is, the sun's out. There's no cloud. Small light source in the sky, and what you've got is the sun's behind them. So I position them so the sun's behind them. So if the sun's directly overhead, like you said, that's really tough. But this one, the sun's behind them. So I've put the sun behind them, and that means you're going to get this rim around the back of the hair.
You got a glow.
So I've exposed for the face, which is exactly what you're just talking about. I've got the rim behind the hair. But what I've also done, I've made sure there's a background behind that's not bright. So I'm shooting against a darker background. I'm shooting against something where the sun can't be seen or the sky can't be seen. And what you get in the end, and you can see on the shoulder over here how bright the sun is and how harsh that shadow is. But what you end up getting is a studio looking light because you can see the light, you understand the light, and you're positioning yourself to actually take advantage of that light. So I just wanted to insert that there because it just fit perfectly what you were just saying to illustrate.
Exactly. Let me ask you this. Did you use any fill flash in that shot?
None whatsoever.
Okay. So it's just all natural lighting.
All natural light, just exposed for the face, knew where the light source was. And that's one of the things when you're commercial photography and you work in a studio, you go outside and you treat it like a studio. So you can't position your lights. So you position yourself and the subject instead. So so you're going to have the sky itself is going to be reflecting light back onto the face. So if you expose for that well, and you can see, if I go back, the shadows under her eyes are a little bit dark because in her eyes. So you haven't got perfect thing. But, and you can see there's no catch light. So you can see I haven't used the flash there. But because I've exposed to the face, like you said, because I can see the light and I understand the light, then it's about the moment. So now I'm taking the picture and it's about the moment. It's about, I've got my stage, I've got my light, now I'm capturing the moment. And it's learning, it's figuring that out, isn't it, Kevin? When you're doing this sort of stuff that's outside and you're not controlling the light, it's knowing how to see it and how to capture that moment.
Well, and the light on their faces is very soft. And the reason is because, the sun, if the sun is to their back, the sun is not shining on them. So the only light that's on their, or it's not shining on their face. The light on their face is being reflected if the sun's to their back. Yeah. So since it's reflected, it's softer. So it's incredible that you took that in bright, harsh sunlight.
Yeah, hard light. And what I'll do is I'll just show you the actual true lighting condition that I was shooting in, because I took this, and sometimes I don't care about the light. Sometimes it's more about the moment. So if I just bring this one up, this is the same shoot, same time. This is like 5 minutes before. And you can see on this, and all this was about, I couldn't get the light, but what I could get was the sheep in the background, and I could get, them interacting, and the light isn't perfect. I've got a really high, but you can see how hard the light was on that day.
Right.
And this time I let the background dictate rather than position them for the light. So I like that shot because I like the fact that, I knew the sheep were there and I wanted that picture, and, but the light on that isn't that good. And actually the eyes are probably drawn here and here. And that's something people need to understand about light as well. Your eyes are drawn to the highest point of contrast. So your eyes are going to be drawn here. They're going to be drawn here. They're going to be drawn to the dress. And that's why light becomes really important. You want to bring people's eyes to the thing. I kept the picture, not because it's not very well lit, but I kept it because I just like the moment rather than actually, being a good technical photograph.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great photograph. I'm sure the couple enjoyed that. Hey, and I want to point this out too. Really, everything that you just talked about, you could do the exact same thing with a phone or a point and shoot camera.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The thing you don't get with an iPhone or something. I've just got the iPhone 6s Plus coming this week, so that's going to be interesting because that's supposed to have like one of the best cameras out there. It's got image stabilization. It's got all sorts. So I'm going to see what I can get out of that. And if I get if I can find one, I might show an iPhone picture if I've got one that are kicking around while we're talking. But yeah, you just don't get the depth of field, but you'll still get, good images from those sorts of things, Kevin, because I can't find an iPhone picture at the moment anyway.
But something else to think about too when we're talking about lighting, soft light tends to flatten an image. And so that's another reason why you don't necessarily want to shy away from all shadows. Shadows give you some depth. And the other thing is about the middle of the day when the sun is straight down. It is the hardest time to photograph. But one option a lot of people may not think about is that could be a great time to shoot black and white because you've got so much contrast, and the color saturation is not as good. And I don't understand the physics behind why color saturation isn't good as noon. But I read that and I looked at my photographs and I see it. I see what they're talking about. But one way to get around that is you can convert those to black and white.
I've got a perfect example here. Again, this is another friend's wedding. And what I liked about this image was obviously the light The light's not brilliant. This is a wedding. This is in a chapel, walking out the door. And I might have used some bounce flash here. But the point is about the moment. I was waiting for the moment. And you can see the confetti. You can see the confetti is frozen in midair. So you can see and I just love over here that you can see the heart shapes. You can literally see the hearts and everything flying through the air. And it's that moment. Now, I did do a bit of Photoshop on this afterwards because there was some bits over here. And I'm a photographer. I don't mind removing stuff. Are you with me? If I think it detracts from the image, a photo for me is what the photographer produces with his photography and his editing skills. And there's a lot of purists out there that will say, oh, no, you shouldn't touch a photo. But for me, an image is something I create. So it's a mixture between a photo and a painting. But with this, again, it's what you're just talking about, the black and white. If I showed you the color of this, which I don't have here, but it's not that great an image. But the minute I turned it to black and white, the contrast jumped out. And now we've got some really, a really powerful image that they love, for their on their wedding day. And there were some friends and they had an official photographer, and I just took my camera and I was just taking some additional pictures as a little gift for them.
One of the things people don't think about sometimes with black and white is all about the tonal contrast. So sometimes you see a picture that really stands out. Maybe somebody's wearing a red sweater against green trees, and they really stand out in color. But then you go to change it into black and white, and they just blend right in because there's not enough tonal contrast. And I think one of the things that made that photograph pretty powerful was you had the white on the dress, the white on the shirt, and obviously her skin tone. It just really stood out. You're talking about capturing those confetti in midair. And one of the things that you have to think about when you're trying to capture a moment is shutter speed. What do you want to freeze? And this is a personal preference, but I know like a lot of people that do action, like do sports photography, they always use a really high shutter speed, and because they're worried about motion blur. And so you'll see people like starting with 1,000 or trying to go up higher if they can to make sure that everything's frozen. Which 500 will freeze a runner just fine. Even 250 will usually freeze a runner, but people speed up because they're worried about having any blur. But the reality is, I think when I see an action photo, if unless somebody's feet is off the ground, if everything is frozen, it doesn't necessarily convey the action. You know what I'm saying? Especially like somebody's batting a ball. And if you shoot it on 1,000th of a second, everything's frozen. It really doesn't look any different from them posing with a bat. And so, one of the things that I like to do when I'm trying to capture a moment is try to communicate that action. And so a lot of times I'll do 100 or 1/250th of a second because that's fast enough that you can keep their face and any part of their body that's not moving quickly in sharp focus. But like if they're swinging a bat or if they're kicking a ball or if they're running, then there's some blur there, and that motion blur really communicates the moment, and I think captures it much better than just freezing everything. And so it's something to think through when you're anticipating a moment. And obviously you were thinking about that confetti and you wanted to freeze it, midair, and it looks really great because confetti can't be suspended. So when you see it, you realize the motion, but if somebody were walking through, though, you wouldn't necessarily know the difference from them walking and posing. So you have to make those creative decisions when you're thinking about shutter speed and trying to capture the moment and communicate what's happening.
Yeah, and it's about looking for the moment and waiting for the moment. And now the guy I was remembering is Henri Cartier-Bresson. He's one of my favorite photographers. And he was the French photographer that was, he perfected this. And a lot of people will look at his work and they don't realize that. He was the master at setting a stage and then waiting for the moment to come in. And, he's inspired, he's probably been the biggest inspiration of the classic photographers on my photography, and I just absolutely love his work. I'm just going to see if I can share this. I don't know if this one's going to fit. So obviously it's a blab. It's very small, so it's hard to see. And this is an image that I don't shy away from, like 3:1 crops. I quite like them if it suits the picture, and this was taken on a little, my daughter stole this camera now, so this was taken on a little Finepix X100. Is that the one? Yeah, it's a little camera. So this wasn't taken on, one of my DSLRs. This was taken on a little FinePix. So it's a good camera. Don't get me wrong. When it came out, it was like £500 camera, and it's one of these pocket cameras that do have a relatively decent sized sensor inside. And what you've got here is this surfer. Again, you notice the highest point of contrast. Obviously, if you could see it bigger, the picture would be much more dramatic. But what we've got this leading line of the wave coming down. So that draws the eye down. And then we've got this point of contrast here. And we've got the surfer caught in the white wave. So, I'm sitting there and I'm watching these surfers, and I'm taking picture after picture after picture. And that's the other thing about capturing the moment, isn't it, Kevin? Sometimes you just got to take picture after picture after picture before you get that image.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I hate to say there's luck involved, but sometimes there is a plan to luck, if you will, taking multiple images. When I shoot baseball, what I do is as soon as the ball leaves the pitcher, I start firing on continuous shoot. And, I'm hoping that one of those pitchers is going to catch the ball in the frame and is going to catch the bat in motion and really communicate. And so, usually there's 1 out of 5 of those that you want to keep. But sometimes you just have to take a lot of pictures to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to, and the other thing about what you're trying to capture is the emotional drama of the moment. And I think that's really important that people understand. I've got this image as a blank, but I'm just going to show this. Again, this was shot on a that little XF100 my daughter stole from me because she loves photography. So she saw it, she fell in love, and I could literally put it in my pocket. Let me see if I can bring this up. So, yeah, okay. So obviously I've got some text on this, and I have this image without the text because I just use my images for social media and stuff. But what it was with this, I'm watching the moment. And, this guy standing near the edge of a cliff, and what he's doing is he's just throwing his buoy and catching him and having this great time. And again, you can see it's really harsh light. You can see the shadow and everything. But it's about waiting for that emotion, that the dad throwing him and the catching in the legs and the arms and everything just frozen in that moment. That's what I was trying to capture. That I saw the moment, I saw the emotion. So I didn't have a lot of time with this one. I couldn't position myself, but I made the best of what I had, grabbed the shot, and caught that moment. And obviously without the text, it's a much better image. But that's, again, that idea of capturing the moment and using the light you've got.
If you can keep that picture up for a second, one thing I think it's interesting to think about is when if you just ask yourself, what am I trying to capture? Because and obviously I'm looking at a pretty small image here, but the face I can't even see, and the jacket's dark and everything. But really, that doesn't detract anything from the picture because you're trying to capture a dad having a great time with his son, and even if you just had a silhouette, it would communicate that. And so sometimes I think people worry about getting like faces properly exposed and everything, but that may not be necessary if the whole point like this is the action that's going on between the son and father. Just the silhouettes communicates what's going on here.
Yeah, and it's about capturing, and this is what I say to people, it's about capturing the emotion in the moment. So when I'm taking a lot of photography, and I see someone and they pose for me, I absolutely hate it when people pose, because I don't want them, don't get me wrong, there's times, but like this, let's show you, this is a sample of some of my corporate work. And this is going back to studio, and this is about emotion. And this is one of my favorite images, okay? I'm breaking a couple of rules here on purpose. But she was smiling. She was doing all this other stuff. A friend of mine, actually, a business partner of mine, actually, and was doing some corporate photography for her. And she was doing all this other stuff. But what I was waiting for was that moment when I just caught her. Does that make sense? So this was in the studio, and I'm waiting for that moment when, and especially when you're photographing people and they're conscious of the camera, and it goes probably beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but it's about, I'm trying to bring it as the emotion. I'm trying to capture the person. I'm trying to capture what they're feeling or who they are in that moment. And this for me is one of my favorite pictures because it just captured her in between. Because when you're doing corporate portraiture, you're trying to get people to relax because they all want to show you their teeth. They all want to stand like soldiers, you know, straight up and stiff because they think they're having the photograph taken and they're back in Victorian times. But you're trying to capture that moment when people are relaxed and when you're just capturing the essence of the person.
And, you know, I can look at this photograph and say, wow, you know, that's a great portrait, but probably only somebody that knows her could really appreciate it because probably what you're thinking is that looks just like her.
Mm.
Because you capture her natural expression, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. Sometimes people miss that. You're not looking for the extreme. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You're not looking for the extreme. Sometimes you're just looking for the person. You're just looking for that emotion. And everything is about, for me, everything is about capturing the emotion.
Well, Mark, we've been talking here for about 30 minutes. Why don't we open up a seat here and see if anybody wants to jump in or somebody has any questions? Yeah. Anybody there have any questions? Okay, here comes John.
Hello.
Hello, John. Welcome.
Hi, John.
Yeah, I got my first DSLR about a year ago, a little over a year. I got a Canon 70D, and my first love is aviation. So been doing more aviation photography than anything else.
Okay. And
a little bit of landscape. And something that I discovered is, you know, when you start out in photography, you got to go wide on landscapes. That's, you know, shoot at a wide angle, you know, with a wide angle lens. The last two landscape photos I did, one was 105 millimeters on a crop sensor, and the other one was about 45 millimeters on a crop sensor. And so I was just realizing that, hey, these are my favorite images so far for landscapes. And they're not in the traditional sense of a wide angle, you know, shot.
Yeah, 105. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you know, people, when you learn photography, you go, okay, let's just be honest about what photographers are most of the time. We're gearheads, okay? Mm-hmm. So most photographers are gearheads. We come to photography, and the first thing, especially as men, we want to do is we want to buy all the equipment. Mm-hmm. Are you with me? We want to buy all the stuff, and then we go out and we read all the books and we see everything, and we find, you know, the thing that we think people want as, you know, what's the standard, and we work within that. But once we start seeing light and emotion and moments and things like that, I forget about my focal length. You know, I'll tell you, you know, what do you know our favorite, for me, shooting, one of my favorite focal lengths is 200 millimeter. I've got lenses coming out of my ears. I've got all these commercial lenses. When I go out and shoot for myself, I take a 7D, which has got one of the worst sensors on the market, I think, in the terms of purist, does the job. And I've got an 18-200 millimeter Canon lens on it. Now, the purists, most of the images I've been showing you of my personal stuff was with that lens. And the purists will go, oh, you know, that's a terrible lens and that's not a great body. But the equipment, you know, shouldn't hold you back. It's about finding your own focal length. It's about finding your own sort of style. And that, a lot of the time, is really what it's about.
Yeah, I watched a class online about phone photography, and I was really interested and had a really experienced professional photographer was teaching this class. And she said that she's at the point now that phones are so good, she doesn't even take her DSLRs and stuff on vacation for her. And she's talking about just using her phone. But the thing the comment that she made was, she said, it's really gratifying to get a great photograph with the phone and say, hey, it's not the equipment, it's the photographer, you know, understanding choices.
Absolutely. And what I say to people is, if you can understand light and composition, and you've got a guy next to you and he's got, a Canon 1DX and you've got an iPhone, you'll take better pictures because you know what you're looking for. You know what an image is really about. So the camera is a tool. And don't get me wrong, my camera, my favorite camera is a 5D Mark III. Love my 5D Mark III. Absolutely adore that camera. I think it's the best pound for pound camera ever made. It's good enough. I don't even need to bother with a 1DX. Absolutely love that camera. But that's my photography is not limited to the camera or the equipment I use or the style.
Mm-hmm.
And so, John, when you're doing aerial photography, I've never done that before. So tell us about like the how does lighting affect you? Do you look for shadows and try to capture those, or?
I just had my first air-to-air shoot about 3 weeks ago, and it was early morning. When we took off, it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes after sunrise. And it was, unfortunately, it was mostly cloudy with a few bits of sun coming through. And with aviation photography, you really aim for a very low, slow shutter speed to get the propeller. And so you basically, you have to, it's kind of a spray and pray mentality. When an airplane, like if I was capturing a low pass of an aircraft going by from the ground, I'm on burst, and I'm usually shooting right around 100th of a second, at all the way zoomed in. And I'm lucky to get a couple of shots where they're halfway decent, and one's where it's the right angle and it's sharp. So you waste a whole bunch of photos just to get that one good one. So
I think the best place to practice on that stuff, because obviously air photography, birds, just find seagulls, practice on seagulls. That's, if anyone was saying to me, I wanted to do aircraft photography, I would say, right, practice on birds, because get some seagulls. If you can get some decent images of a seagull and the speed they fly around you, and capturing them, because obviously as soon as you zoom out on a fast moving object, you've increased the technical difficulties of that shot by an incredible amount. Because you don't get anything moving faster than flying objects. Sports photography, you can pull back a bit and frame a bit, but when you're getting a bird and airplane, you want it to fill the frame. So that's one of the things there. I just found a quick image, just coming back to something you said earlier, John, when you was talking about, non-standard landscape photography. So this is an image, this for me is all about the light. It's all about the light and the dust setting and the silhouette, and it's just a really simple composition. So it's a really simple image, but that's a landscape. I'm not worried about having everything in focus. I'm not worried about what length it is or anything like that. I just wanted to pop that in there because I knew I had this one there. And a lot of my photography is like this. It's really simple. It's very contrasty. And I just wanted to pump that out there so that people can see when we talk landscape, sometimes it's, if you look at it, there isn't actually much landscape there. What you've got, 2 trees, a silhouette, and a sky. But that doesn't stop it becoming a compelling image.
Yeah. I just popped a link to my Google Plus profile, and the cover photo is of that image I took at 105 millimeters.
Yeah, it's nice. Let me see if I can bring that up so people can see that. I'll just bear with me a sec.
Now, John, where did you take that at?
That's just out behind our house. So.
Which is in the United States or?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
that's a great photo. And it was obviously, it looks like it was overcast on that day.
It was mostly cloudy, but there's peaks of sun.
Yeah. So you got some really soft light there.
Yeah.
Is this the one we're talking about, guys? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just change that back to here. See if I can get that up for you. Let's have a look. So this is the image. I'm just going to crop this one again. So just bear with me. And then we can see it properly.
And then I'll just pull up I have one collection on Google Plus with all my aviation photos. And I'll just pop that link into the chat. But I love shooting words. And of course, when they are flying, they're screaming by at 200-300 miles an hour sometimes. So that's a real challenge.
What works for me in this image, the thing that actually works for me in this image is the highest point of contrast, which is what I was talking about earlier. So what we've got over here, and when you're looking at it on a big screen, guys, you can see it. You've got the farmhouse over here, and because it's so white and it draws the eye, what actually happens is the center focus of this image is actually the farmhouse. Mm-hmm. So the bales are just giving it context, but the thing you're actually looking at is the house. That's what's actually going to draw the eye. So what's actually happening here is you've got, and you probably, I don't know if you can see it on the small screen, but there's a sweep, and you put a vignette on it, but there's a sweep almost through the bales that draws the eye round. Yeah. So you've got this. This is what makes the image for me, and I don't know what you guys feel about that, or if you've actually thought about it, John. But it's this high point of contrast. It's that white on the dark that actually, that's where my eye goes and draws me, and it gives it the context.
Well, and if you look at the bales, particularly on the far right, it almost creates a leading line. The rows.
Yeah.
Are you talking this side, John, for you? Because I'm not sure what's right, or over here.
Yeah, I was looking at the bale right in the front there, in the foreground. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's the first thing they're going to notice, and then they're going to notice the next bale just to the left and back a little bit.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're going to notice, the house there.
Yeah. So that's where you're going to end up every time. You might come in, and it's understanding the way people look at images really important. They might come in on this bale because this bale is really dominant. It's a really strong element in the picture. And that's where your eye is going to fall. And then as your eye goes through, it's going to draw back, and it's going to fall back, and you're coming back, but you're going to end up here, and then you're going to be thinking, what's happening in that farmhouse? What's going on in there? Where is this place? That's where the eye eventually ends up. And it's understanding that when it comes to creating images, that's really important.
Yeah. Great shot, buddy.
Then I tossed another link to my collection on Google Plus for the aviation photos. And it's very obvious when you go down to the bottom. Those are taken almost a year ago at the very beginning. How I progressed.
This one here, let me bring this up if we can. No, wrong window. Sorry, guys. Why is it bringing that one up?
So, John, did you add those vignettes like in Photoshop after the fact, or?
I don't do it. I have to still learn Photoshop. Everything that I do is either in Lightroom or the Nick collection so far.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. So, did you do like the vignettes in Lightroom?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I just needed to refresh the window. So I just want to bring this image up that you shared with us, John, on your things. Now, I love this image, and I'll explain why I love this image, because compositionally it's really, really well balanced. It's in the center of the frame, and some people, people say don't put your subject in the middle of the frame, but all the compositional rules are there to be ignored, so to speak. But what really works for me on this is the lines underneath. And the fact that the airplane is, flying along these lines. And then you've almost got this other line at the front here, which is matching the lines of the wings. So it's almost like a counterbalance, these lines here. And it's these lines in the background for me that really make the image. And just so you want to tell us a little bit about this image, John?
That was from the first air-to-air photo shoot. About 3 weeks ago, and we were just passing. This was a very small wheat field. I thought, okay, let's get a couple of shots fired off and hope that I get one, because I was shooting at 1/80th of a second shutter speed there, which
Wow.
ultimately did not matter a whole lot because there's not a lot of sun to reflect off the prop. And the position that I was in, I was shooting from the front seat of an airplane with the window open, or the door off, actually, off the right side. I was actually shooting with my arm braced against the seat, around if this was shorter. But of course, this is not ideal because you're passing vibrations from the airplane into your arm because you're bracing against the seat. Ideal situation would be you're just sitting there relaxed with your arms like this, cushioning. And so I know I would have gotten a lot higher keep rate of images if I had a better airplane to shoot from.
But for me, John, that image was worth the flight.
Yeah.
Are you with me? That for me, that would be a print for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd print that and put it on the wall. That would be, because it's just the lines, the leading lines caught in that, and you've got the plane, and it tells a story, and everything's there. That's a really powerful, compelling image.
Yep, and I got a few more that I have not posted yet. And the other one that I really like is is of the same Stearman biplane, but with it over calm water, with the clouds reflecting.
I just want to bring this one up. Okay, do you want to talk us through this? Because this is what you was talking about earlier, Kevin, wasn't it? It was a good example. You're talking about sometimes, what you've got here is you've managed to freeze this, but you've still got the blur in the background. So just walk us through, the sense of movement and what happened here and the story behind this image, John.
Okay, well, a friend of the family stopped in. I live on an airstrip, and
That's handy.
And anyways, this friend of ours only stops in every so often. I thought this Stearman is a legend around here in Minnesota because of what his dad did with it. He used to do banner towing for the Twins baseball team, over the stadium, and so it was a very recognizable aircraft. Some TV news stations have done stories about it. So I knew this would be a great aircraft to capture because it really speaks of, the history of, barnstorming and aviation here in Minnesota.
So were you on the ground or were you in another plane at this point?
I was on the ground doing a panning shot. I believe it was 1/125th of a second shutter speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to the point you were saying earlier, Kevin, doesn't it? About sometimes when people shoot fast-moving objects they want to freeze everything, but you actually, and I think this is a perfect example of what you were talking about earlier. So I just wanted to sort of show that.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, panning takes a lot more skill, and it's best to usually don't continue to shoot and take a lot, because if you're the speed that you're panning differs from the speed of the plane, you're going to get blurred. But you obviously got it. You got a great shot there. So
yeah,
that's a good one.
And have you spent time practicing that skill, John? Is that something you're conscious of?
That's something that that was the very first thing that I was conscious of when I was shooting aviation. Once I got that somewhat figured out, I still need a lot more practice. Once I got that somewhat figured out, I'm starting to look at composition, and I think this image right here is the perfect example of me knowing exactly what's going to happen and setting up for the shot. I move my my focus point from the center position one click up, so I can hit the prop spinner as he did the flyby. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I sat on the runway when I did this, so it came flying right over me. So
yeah, I like that. I just love the the simplicity of that shot and the sense of movement and and the smoke and everything that's going on there. I don't know what you think, Kevin, but I think that's that's a good shot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, John, man, you've added a lot to this. I appreciate you sharing your images with us and allowing us to look at those. That's great.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd appreciate if you could show that one other one with that Stearman biplane over water, clear water.
Let me see.
You'll see a black and white of it too. There's two different versions.
Stearman air to air. Let me see if I can find this. What do you know? What the title of the image is?
Look
John?
for a black and white. I believe it's the only black and white I have in the past dozen posts.
Yeah, there's a couple of images that are not showing for me. They're showing on minus. So
okay, if you just click on it, it should display.
Oh, okay. It's just a thumbnail missing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been in contact with Google engineers saying, "Hey, I need this fixed," because every so often one of my photos don't show after a half day of it showing.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before, and I've been on Google Plus for a long time.
I can't find a black and white.
Yeah, I've got it. Let me bring this up.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me bring this one up.
Okay.
This one?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the one. And
okay.
I entered that into, are you familiar with Toby and Christina? They're Photorec Toby. They do a YouTube channel on photography. I entered it into their weekly photography challenge, and that won a runner-up. And the first comment of the guy that runs that group, he said, that's kind of cool there with the clouds behind the airplane. I said, no, that's actually water, calm water, with the clouds reflecting off of it.
You know what I love about that is you shot it. It's in black and white. I don't know if you shot it in black and white or you took it later, but I think about photography and that era of when that plane was new. It would have been a black and white shot, and so I think that really adds a lot to it. That you got the black and white shot there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a good shot. I'm just trying to find a couple of bits if I can. But it's some good stuff there, John. Some good stuff. Just out of curiosity, John, how did you find us? Was you just on Blab and wandering around?
No, actually, I think you might have followed me on Google Plus maybe a week or two ago, and then I saw a post of yours because I automatically add photographers to different to get notifications. I have a few select amount of people that I get notifications, so I added you to notifications. And I saw Blab, and I'm just getting into this, and I haven't seen anything on photography yet on Blab. I thought, I'll subscribe and tune in. So
yeah, people are going to be curious how I'm actually doing this, by the way, guys. And I know, Kevin, you're going to want to be doing
I'm curious myself.
More Blabs.
This is my first time on Blab, so
I'm doing a lot of people will be looking at what I'm doing, going, "How are you doing that?" And I think if you're going to be doing Blabs for photography, this is something quite sort of important that you need to be sort of figuring out. So all this is a piece of software called XSplit Broadcaster. I've got two screens. So I've got a second screen, and I can screen capture the area. And so all I'm doing is opening up what I want to look at in a browser, and then I'm just screen capturing that area. And then I can just display that by switching over in my scenes so you guys can see the image.
Now, is that on Mac that you're doing that, or Windows?
No, this is Windows. Windows only for XSplit Broadcaster.
Okay.
And but it's really powerful, and it costs about, I think, £12 for every 3 months or something. It's ridiculously sort of low in terms of thing. I'm just going to share this image with you guys. This is my stuff. This is the stuff I just do for myself. Let me just see if it's going to let me. Let me just flick out. Okay. For some reason, it doesn't want to replace the image sometimes. I'm not sure why. You'd think it'd just replace it. So let me just add that in. Just bear with me, guys. For some reason, it's not. And this is what I was talking about earlier, practicing just with birds. Let me just bring that across. And it's just again, it's capturing that moment, you know, and that's what it's really about. You know, for me, this was, you know, it's not going to win any awards or anything, but it was just capturing the moment when that bird was just opening up. You can see all the feathers, this little blue tit, English bird, and it's just, you know, capturing that moment and anticipating and waiting and watching. And that's what I was saying earlier about when you're practicing fast-moving objects. One of the best things to practice on the birds because they're so hard. And photographing fast-moving objects, I think, is probably the most technically challenging of all the photography skills.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but I very rarely shoot in manual mode when I'm doing this. So I didn't know if we want to quickly mention, you know, what sort of settings we use when we're doing, you know, high speed shots and everything. Because for me, when we're doing when I do stuff like this, you know, I'm going into, you know, aperture priority mode every time because I just want to maintain whichever shutter speed I sort of choose. I want to maintain that. So I don't have to worry about that. So I just didn't know what you guys thought on your settings or what you've.
Did you just say that you use aperture priority?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. No. Shutter priority.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
I was going to say I use shutter priority.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And what it is, I did a course on. I'm Canon, and I did a course on, you know, some basics of manual exposure on Udemy. And you know, it's one of the courses I teach, and so I had to learn all the terms for it, and I've confused myself now because I'm like, is on the Canon, is it time value or?
It's on Canon. It's TV, and on Nikon it's an S, and
yes,
I refer to both of them as shutter priority mode. But yeah.
Oh, guys, that's what I didn't ask you as well before we talk about. So, what do you shoot on? Canon, Nikon?
I'm Canon.
I'm Canon too.
Yeah, I'm Canon all the way. And anybody watching wondering why I use Canon, the Nikon sensors are better, but with Canon you've got many more lenses, and it's all about the glass. So
for me, I've been gravitating more towards the Sigma lenses. You know, I got the 24-105 for the air-to-air photography, and a crop sensor that is perfect for.
So that surprises me because that's quite. So you like to get really close because my natural shooting range is about 200 millimeter for everything. I just so a little tip for people: you want to do good portraits and you haven't got a lot of money, buy a cheap 200 millimeter, rack it out to about 180, and shoot it like that, and it will compress the background like a prime. But so you're saying 24-105. So where do you shoot on that? Is it about 105? Do you push it to the limit?
Well, when I'm doing an air-to-air shoot, I'm probably closer to the 40 to 80 millimeters most of the time. Yeah, and the problem with a full frame is you almost have to tote around two lenses because a 24-105 that doesn't quite reach out far enough for some of the shots that you like to get, and so then you have to have the 70-200.
Yeah.
But on a crop sensor, you have just enough range in it, 24-105, to be able.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Siggy lenses as well. I've got two in my bag. I've got the 70-200 2.8, which is a great lens. I'd like the Canon, but it's not £1,000 better, so that's why I've got that. And the 85mm, Siggy 85. Love that lens for portraiture. But
yeah, I use a Sigma for sports photography, and that was just a budget consideration, but it's pretty good lens. But
so what lens is that, Kevin?
I got a 7300.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what's a cracking little lens, and I had it, but I sold it, and I want to get it back again. Is the Tamron 7300 VC?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have come across that.
I haven't used it.
It's a lovely little lens. It's a great little lens, really sharp. So I think it's f 3.5 to 5.6. So by the time you're getting up to the other end, it's starting to get a little bit. In terms of aperture, it's getting a bit narrow. So it's starting to go sort of, a little bit slow on the end. But it's a great little lens. It only costs about £300 in the UK, £350. So, that's a great little lens as well. But yeah, I'm when I buy lenses, for me, even commercial stuff, I've got Canon L lenses and stuff. But if I find a third-party lens that does it, I'm not a lens snob, and I don't know about you guys, but camera gear gets expensive fast.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the next lens that I'm looking at is I'm having a tough time deciding between the Nucam 100 to 400 or the Sigma 150 to 600.
Have you looked at the 120-300 2.8?
See, I already have a kit lens that's 55 to 250, and that's what I use for my air ground to air shooting, and that is limiting under a lot of circumstances as far as the range. And I was at an air show where I rented the 100 to 400. I really loved that. But the problem is I was close enough to the action. This was kind of an exception to the rule. I was close enough to the action where I couldn't get two airplanes in the frame as they're going by at times back at 100 millimeters. Yeah. So I'm like, do I really want to be getting that 150 to 600 when I have that problem from time to time?
You can end up with two cameras. That's what you're going to do, John. Yeah. You're going to end up with two cameras. You're going to have your big one on the tripod. I'll tell you what's going to happen. You have your big one on the tripod, and you're going to have another one on your shoulder for them close-up shots. And that's what people. But I think that's why crops can be really useful as well, because with crops, you don't have to spend a fortune to get a range. We know they're not the sharpest cameras, or they're not the sharpest lenses all the way through, but some people get overboard on sharpness, in my opinion. But you get that range, because when my Siggy 18 to 200, when I'm just my Canon 18-200, when you go into the forums, that lens gets panned. Literally, everyone pans that lens. Oh, it's a terrible lens, not sharp. But you know what? When I'm out and about, I'm 18 to 200. There's not much I can't capture in a moment when I need to capture it. So for me, that's an absolute fantastic street photography lens. I think you just got to find the lens that works for your shooting style, and gives you that flexibility. And then there are specialist lenses. Like I've got the 1635, I've got the 7200, I've got the 2470, I've got, all these other different lenses. But it's interesting. Whenever I grab and I'm just doing photography, I just grab the 18-200 because it's so versatile. Yeah. What do you shoot with, Kevin? What's your main sort of lens?
Well, if I'm doing the sports, obviously I use that 7300, and then I've got a Canon 50mm fix that's pretty sharp. And if I'm doing portraits or landscape or anything, I usually use a 50mm.
Yeah.
One of the things, of course, you were talking about two cameras. I mean, every sports photographer needs two cameras because you can't. Inevitably, somebody runs up on top of you, and then you can't capture it. I know one of the experience I had. I was using a crop sensor, and I got the 7300 on there. So even when you back it all the way down to 70 on a crop sensor, it's pretty close up. And guys on the sideline would huddle up and they say, "Hey, take our picture." I said, "Okay, back up about 30 feet. That's so I can get you in." It's a sports lens, guys.
Yeah, I just got tired of lugging stuff around. I've sold some equipment recently, but I've got a 5D Mark III, which I use for commercial work. 5D Mark III is a phenomenal camera. I've still got an old 5D Mark II, which I use for studio stuff, and my 7D. I've slimmed right down. I had like loads of stuff, and then I slimmed right down and bought some video equipment for the training I do and all sorts of stuff. So, I slimmed a lot of it down to what I just needed. But yeah, I think there's a difference between, going somewhere intentionally and knowing what you're shooting, and then you have to take what lenses and cameras you need. But if you're just walking around, you have to find something that works within your shooting style, and you can just pick up and go and not worry about, 9 lenses in your bag and you got a backache after 5 minutes trying to carry it everywhere.
Yeah.
The 24 to 105, with the exception of doing a couple of shoots like with that Stearman, that panning pass. I use the 55 to 250 kit lens on that shoot. But aside from that, the 24 to 105 has pretty much lived on my camera all summer. I haven't taken it off.
So have you figured out what your focal length is, John? What do you, when you go back and analyze, and if you did a bell curve, what would be your, because see, for me, I'm about 180 millimeter, and this is really interesting psychologically. That, that tells you something about the photographer. So I like to hang back and capture the moment when people aren't watching and when the events are going on. So I tend to shoot about 180 millimeter. That's where that's where you're going to see. If you had a bell curve saying where do I most often shoot, you'd find me around there. So even though you're using a 24-105, what would be the focal length you think you naturally sort of go to?
I would say that initially I was going wide angle on a lot of stuff, but as I was first mentioned, I see a couple of my 2 latest landscape shots were zoomed in really tight. But with my aviation photography, a lot of that is zoomed in. Like when I had the 250, a lot of it might be zoomed in right at 250. If I had the 400 on there, I'll bet you my average for the day, if I was shooting with the 100 to 400, maybe 300 millimeters. Aviation is so much more where I zoom in so much more. I have a feeling that I would be around the 50 to 100 range, somewhere in there for a lot of my shooting. But like, you mentioned that you're shooting at 180 millimeters. Maybe a year from now, maybe I'll be there, because I started out wide.
The reason I do a lot of that is, if I can find a shot where I can bring that up. The reason I do that a lot of the time is because, I can take a shot, and this is a real top tip for people. If I rack out to 200 or 180, it's gonna compress the background. It's gonna give me that blur, and people are gonna think that I've used the prime when I haven't. I use my 18-200 to take portraits, casual portraits, and get the depth, shallow depth of field, just by stepping back, that little bit extra space, and just compressing the background.
Now, Mark, there was a word I didn't understand there. You said people were going to think you used, and it sounded like you said prime.
Yeah, prime lens. Yeah. So what I'm saying is when. So let me just bring this one up if it'll work for me this time. For some reason let me just clear that. For some reason it takes a screen grab, and then even though I change what's on the screen, it keeps the old one. So that's really interesting. Now this isn't a great picture, but I just wanted to illustrate because I want to illustrate if you can see the depth of field. So this is, and I've got much better pictures than this, but this is just to illustrate the point more than anything. This is 200 millimeter. This is probably a 180 millimeter. I've got the bird in the middle, and the sea in the back is just dropped away. It's gone. And that's and using a longer focal length will create that look as if it's a prime. If I can find a better image, I will. So that's the point I'm trying to illustrate, is that, when you're creating, you're out and you're shooting, a lot of the time, you don't need all these lenses. You can move your feet and get similar images. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's about okay, so you've got your camera out, and there's times when stuff approaches you too fast and nothing you can do. But you can just literally, with my 18-200, and I can imagine the purists out there cringing, going, Mark, don't tell people to buy 18-200s, they're not sharp and all the rest of it. And, the corner edge sharpness isn't there and all the rest of it. You know what? When I'm out there, I want to capture that moment. I don't care if it's not the sharpest image in the world. Mm-hmm. What I want to be able to do is capture that moment in the instant. So let me see if I can find one. Yeah, so here's an example. I've got this here. Let me see if I can bring this up. This is another sort of example of capturing the moment. So let me just check that's okay. I'll just recapture that. And what I'm pointing out here is, let me just reframe that one, because that one's, bear with me 1 second. Let me just get that. Okay, because I want you to see the image in its proper context. Now, I haven't got the original. I don't know what's happened on Google+, but a load of my photos seems to have disappeared. Surprised me, because I had a lot more images than showing in my photos folder, if that makes sense, guys. And now I've come here and hardly any images are there. So I've got so this is a friend's son of mine, and so here, what's the moment? Well, he's playing, and I don't know if you can see it on our screen, but he's playing in the water, of a drain lid, and he shouldn't be doing it. And he knows he shouldn't be doing it because he's looking up. But the light is there on his face. This is outside. It's natural daylight. And I'm capturing that moment when he's being naughty and he's looking up and he's got like this naughty little look in his face. And am I getting away with this? Because his mum, she's really protective, Mm-hmm. But the point is, I'd have probably shot this about 180 millimeter. And that gives me the look. It looks like I've shot it with maybe an 85 millimeter prime. Mm-hmm. Are you with me? So that's the sort of look it gives me. But because I've just shot it at that length, I've caught the moment. I've compressed it. He's perfectly in focus. One of the things I love about, and you got this on your photography images, John, is I really dislike images that have got a shallow depth of field for the sake of saying I'm shooting with a prime. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. So one of the advantages when you start shooting at a long focal length like this, or a longer focal length, he's completely in focus front to back. Mm-hmm. I'm a commercial photographer. That's my purism. He's in focus from nose to the back of his head. Because I'm shooting at 200 millimeter, I'm compressing, and I'm getting that bokeh. I'm getting that blur as it drops away. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy for me because the lens is there. And then when I... let me just see if I can just find another image. This is, this is the same little guy, same little session, and again, it's that moment, it's that composition where I'm capturing him, but I'm not having to worry about my equipment because I'm focused on capturing the moment. Obviously, it cropped his head a little bit in there because I'm not going to recrop, frame it, but the image is a square image. But that's what it's about. It's about having the equipment to capture the moment, and you've got to be quick. You've got to be fast.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things you're talking about with the 200 is it allows you not to interfere with the subject as much, because if you get too close, you make them nervous, you make them conscious, and with 200 millimeters, that gives you enough distance to hopefully you might even be able to catch them where they're not even paying attention that you're taking a photograph.
Yeah, brilliant point, Kevin. And that's a real key thing for me. And see, because I'm interested in the moment, I'm not interested in post pictures. When I'm doing corporate work, don't get me wrong, that's what the client wants, and that's what we'll do. They're paying for that. They can have, they tell me what they want and I deliver. Mm-hmm. When I'm doing my own work, I want to capture that moment. And the better photos are the natural photos. They're the moments. So that's why I like a long focal length, because like you say, I can drift back and I can capture the images when people aren't looking. And I think that they tend to be my best images.
Yeah. We're obviously way beyond our topic here, but, just kind of continue down that trail. That's one of the things I like to do when I do portraiture people were going to actually give you that cheesy smile. And so what I do is I just go ahead and take those shots. No, I'm not going to use them, but you just got to get it out of their system,
Mm-hmm.
and then just kind of begin to talk to them and I try to tell some jokes if I can, or, anything, and just get them relaxed. And I got some shots with my youngest daughter earlier this year. I had her set up, and it was really, really kind of stiff, not a great shot. And I realized, she was trying really hard, which was the problem. She was trying, and so it was not a good shot. And so I just began to tease her, and she starts moving around, and anyway, I ended up with several great shots that are just like your friend when you showed the corporate headshot of her, and you said, "Hey, that's natural, that's her." And we got several shots. I was looking through with my wife, and she says, "Wow, that looks exactly like her," And it just came from just even though she knew the cameras, they were kidding around with it a little bit, and just letting her natural expressions come out.
Yeah, I just wanted to just show just a couple of my standard sort of corporate pictures, if that's okay, guys. So just so you understand that when I'm talking, let me see which one it is. It's got my RAM now. When I'm talking, let me just remove that. When I'm talking, there's a difference between what I do for a client and what I do for myself, and it's important to understand this principle. So let me just frame that. So, this is a totally boring commercial image,
Mm-hmm.
but exactly what the client wanted. So let me just bring that up. And that's actually a really tough image, believe it or not. People look at that and think, but that's a really, really tough image. And I just wanted to just show some different sort of things that, we do on the corporate level. Some client stuff, some, just standard sort of commercial stuff. And let me see if I can bring up. But even then, I try and sneak my style in. So let me show you something. I'm still trying to sneak my style in all the time. So this guy is a TV presenter in the UK on a well-known car show, and it's a company, and he was sponsoring. They wanted me to go down and do some photos, and it was about just trying to capture him in the moment. So what I'm saying is, we come to the place where we're doing corporate work, and our photography can be a little bit edgier, a little bit better, because we're capturing the moment. So this one, for instance, this was a conductor for an RAF band, and here's a classic example of this shot. Now, he's a conductor, so that means his back is to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So to get this shot, what I had to do was go behind the stage, climb up some stairs, and shoot down from a balcony. I don't even know if I was really supposed to be there, but I had to shoot down from a balcony to capture the moment of his energy. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And that's so what happens is, when you learn to capture the moment in your personal work, when it comes to the corporate stuff, it's going to start, you're going to start being a bit different from everybody else. So one of the key skills to learn in photography, especially if you want to make a career out of it, is this idea of capturing the moment. This is sort of standard stuff. So this is I want the thing. But even then, even when I'm doing my corporate portraiture, you'll see I want to capture the person. I want to capture the, you've already seen that image. I'm always stretching it, pushing it a little bit. It's a very sort of, this is what they wanted on white. But even here, I'm always trying to just get them in that moment we was talking about earlier, Kevin, before, when you was just talking, the moment in between. Not the moment when they give me the big cheesy grin, but the moment in between. Let me see if I've got any more examples. Like there, he's laughing. I've caught him when he's laughing. And a lot of it is about, really just capturing that moment, just waiting for it, seeing it, and anticipating. So hopefully that's going to be something that people can get benefit from.
Hey, I don't have the ability to do this, but Mark, can you show? You see where I just posted that link? That blog article has the pictures I was just talking about with my daughter. You see that?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you pull those up so we can see them?
Which ones do you want? The 3 at the bottom?
The 3 at the bottom. Yeah. 3 at the bottom.
Okay. It's not opening very large. Well, I'll try though. So let me just bring that up. Just remove that, reset it. Yeah, fortunately, I'm not getting a big image on it, so it's not opening up in its own window, Kevin.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
So here's the first picture, and that's the pose, stiff look. Can you scroll over and let's see the other two?
Okay, let me see if I can. Let me just see.
That's okay if we can't pull it up. I mean, people could go look at the website, see what I'm talking about. And of course, just like your friend, I think you got to know her to appreciate how natural those pictures are, of her. But by just talking to her, and there you go.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So the key. Go ahead.
Yeah, carry on, Kevin. No, I'm just getting it in the frame for you.
Yeah. So the key is there, and of course, you look at the picture on the right and you say, well, it's an okay picture, and I understand that. But like, if you knew her and knew her personality, you'd say, oh, wow, that looks exactly like her. That's her. That's such a natural expression, and that that came from just kind of talking to her and starting to tease her a little bit, and that's what it took to bring her out of her shell and get her just to be herself. And so that's there's another one. There's her sassy look, and that's definitely that's all her right there. And so things that we can do to really capture a person's personality is just try to talk to them and get them comfortable and get them moving around. I don't have it where I can show it.
Yeah, and I find that and again, it's about watching the moments in between, which you mentioned earlier, Kevin. It's the moments when they're not posing, and that's what you're waiting for. And it's the same in anything. It's waiting for that moment. And Henry Cartier-Bresson called it the decisive moment. So if you ever get a chance, Henry Cartier-Bresson, have a look at his work. I was very fortunate. I was in London the other week, and I went into a gallery, and we was on a photo shoot. And as we left the photo shoot, it's in Leicester Square in London. I saw this gallery, and they had an exhibition of Henry Cartier-Bresson's work, and it's absolutely phenomenal. The guy was the master at capturing the moment. So if anyone wants to see someone who when he's talking his equipment, he didn't have 1,000th of a shutter speed. We're talking I think we're talking 1920s, 1930s. He had the equipment he had back then. If you'd have given him an iPhone, he would have been over the hill with excitement,
Right,
but the pictures he produced were phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, we've been going almost an hour and a half now. You got any final things you want to throw in here before we wrap it up?
Well, there's something non-photography related. Well, it's indirectly related. I'd like to ask Mark, since he's on Google+. How much have you explored collections on Google+?
Yeah, I use collections from a marketing perspective. So because I use Google Plus a lot for marketing, basically, in my business. But yeah, collections, how much people are engaging with them, I don't know at the moment. They're still very new, and I'd like to see Google push them a little bit more. But they are a great way to get content out there. So if you've got photography work or anything like that, and you want to share a thing, I would suggest you go on Google Plus and you create, aviation photography, you create different photography and share it and share from that collection, and people will start following the collections. So I'm not sure if that's what you're sort of asking, John.
I was more or less asking how much value you've seen. I've seen tremendous value in collections. In fact, two of my collections, and by extension, in a sense, other ones, two of my collections are being featured right now by Google. And one, as I've mentioned before, I love aviation and particularly aviation history. So I have, it's now the largest aviation history collection on Google Plus. And I was featured, I'm trying to remember, was it May that they came out, towards the end of May, collections? I was featured in the beginning of June, and I still am featured. And I went from about 1,000 people to, within a few days here, I should be at 10,000 people following that collection.
That's very good.
And growing a couple of thousand a month.
That's very good, because I've played with it, and I think probably a lot of your success is managed to get into that featured, because growing a collection can be quite tough on Google Plus, unless you've got a very strong following. So, well done. That's pretty good.
My biggest advice, and I think the window of opportunity is kind of closing. But have you explored I think it's they've changed the name a couple of times. Google Plus Creators Community.
No.
I would do that. I highly recommend that. I would post your collections there. Give a quick description of those collections. They have a weekly contest. They might have like I submitted one. I didn't win it this time around, but I submitted a collection for aviation articles that I share. I shared that for education. On the education, I was a finalist, but aviation is a little more specialized compared to general science, and so that was the main reason, I think, why it went the other way. But if you pay attention to those weekly contests, you could be featured that way, or just by simply posting there, sharing your collection there, providing a brief description. They may see, wow, this guy does some really good work. We want to promote that. We want to promote great collections so that people will follow it and, get.
I'll have a look at that, because I've got a lot of photography that's, some of my favorite sort of stuff is it's different than most people's stuff. And I think, that'd be a good tip to explore that and do it properly and actually put a proper collection together. And I think that's probably what you've done. Rather than just add stuff to a collection because that's a way to tag it, you've actually gone out and put a collection together. So I think that's a really good tip for any photographer out there. If you've got a particular theme or anything you want to share, then, that's something to be doing.
And another tip that I would add, I don't think it's right, because you're limited to 50 collections for a profile. Another tip would be, don't create a collection for like your vacation, like vacation in Hawaii. Don't go and create a collection for that. Create a collection for my vacation photography, or maybe your black and white photography. Make it more general. Because if one of them does start taking off, you don't want to be so specialized that you can't provide very many images to it.
Yeah, so if after this, John, if you can just pop onto Google Plus and just send me a message so I can make sure I'm following you, and also send me a link, I'd appreciate that, because I'm big into Google Plus. I've been on it, since very early on. And I teach people how to use Google Plus for marketing, and I wasn't aware of this stuff. So it just goes to show sometimes how big Google Plus is, and people don't realize what's actually going on in some of the places in the corners of Google Plus. So if you could send myself and probably Kevin a link to that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, the vast majority of my social media time is on Google Plus. My friends are on Facebook, but the biggest upside I see is Google Plus, because up until when I got on Google Plus, there's practically nobody else on Google Plus except the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum that was talking about, aviation, and so I've quickly grown to be the largest page in aviation. And this is going to set me up good for what I believe is going to happen is Google is going to start indexing collections as they index.
Well, they are actually indexable, so that's really interesting because my understanding that collections are indexable. They're not a no-follow link. They are actually indexable. So when I create collections, I use them in that sense as well. But I think
what I was saying is that they don't show up in search yet.
They don't.
And so I think in the future they will. So imagine someone types in aviation history, and all of a sudden, what used to show up high, on Pinterest, for a Pinterest board for aviation history, they're going to probably replace that with a Google Plus collection. That's what I'm banking on down the road.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Google develop this. But I've got to shoot off now, guys. It's 9:30 here in the UK in the evening.
Mark, thanks so much. And John, thanks for jumping in and joining. You added a tremendous amount to the whole discussion here, so we appreciate it.
I really enjoyed meeting you guys. So
it's been a pleasure connecting, guys.
Yeah, I followed you both, so I hope to pop on sometime else when you have another blab. I really enjoyed it.
Super.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.